The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of KSMQ Public Service Media Incorporated or its assigns.
Welcome to Garden Connections. I'm your host, Stephanie Passingham. On today's show, we're going to start in Serendipity Gardens in Albert Lea, and Carol Lang is going to show us all around her beautiful cottage gardens that she has surrounding her home. I'm sure you'll love it. We'll also get another great recipe from Chef Stephen Larson, and we'll be back in our community garden plot in Austin. Stay with us for Garden Connections. It's a beautiful place and it's a wonderful oasis.
I'm glad you could come today and visit the gardens and learn a little bit about what Serendipity Gardens really are. It's cozy. It's quiet. It's just very peaceful, and I love to read out here.
Carol, thank you so much for inviting us into this beautiful, serene garden of yours. This is just lovely.
Thank you for coming. I hope you enjoy walking through the gardens and seeing a little bit of heaven. That's what I call it.
Serendipity Gardens, how did you come up with that name?
You know, I always thought a garden needed a name, and serendipity just kind of rolls right off the tongue when you say it, and I thought that's what this garden's all about. Fun, anything that just sounds unique, and I thought serendipity, yep, that's a good name.
And you have so many things happening here. Let's start at the beginning. How long have you been a gardener?
Well, I started probably about 5 years after we moved here. We bought this house in 1968, and we had a huge oak tree that covered the entire yard and the yard on either side. I was really limited to just a few pots of caladiums and of course the begonias, and eventually the tree had to come down. It had just weathered too many years.
Sure.
And then I was able to start adding sun-type flowers to the mix and that.
So you took down this large oak tree, but it's not forgotten. You've incorporated it into your garden scheme.
I have. This tree was just beautiful. It was taken down and they counted the rings and they stopped counting at 250.
Really?
Yes, and they figure
goodness.
it's one of the, if it's not the oldest, it is one of the oldest trees in Freeborn County, and it actually took up space for not just our yard, but both yards on either side. So when the tree came down, I asked them to leave a stump for me. I said, this tree cannot be forgotten. And so we decided we would use it as a perch for a bird feeder. And it has worked out wonderfully because birds and the squirrels love being on it. And I can see them because the bird feeder's up a little bit higher, so it's always, even in the wintertime, you always have that bird feeder
And
there.
provide some structure, some visual interest as well.
Absolutely.
Looks great. So a lot of your gardens have kind of an overriding cottage style theme, although there are variances as you go along. What made you choose that style?
Interesting question. When I started gardening, I knew very little about it, and I didn't even know that there were different types of gardens. And I don't know if you're familiar with Tasha Tudor at all, a very well-known gardener and author. And I fell in love with her gardens after seeing them on a PBS special. And I kind of thought that was where I wanted to go with it. I liked it that it was a very relaxed type of a garden. I like it that there was flowers everywhere and you didn't really have to plan anything. If something came up on its own,
That was okay?
just let it be there.
Just let it be.
I wanted it to be relaxed. I didn't want to be where I had to have a formal garden because I didn't think this backyard really was suitable for a formal garden. I thought it said cottage to me, and it just was one that needed pergolas and arbors and quiet little places to sit and read.
Just like this?
Right, or a place for my granddaughter to play.
Sure. What are some of the plants that you chose specifically to meet that very need, that say cottage? I mean, when you think of phlox, or what are some of the other ones that you have selected?
Definitely the phlox. Cottage gardens always have a variety. They have roses, they'll have trees, and they'll have shrubs. The rudbeckia, to me, is cottage garden. And then I have a Victorian flower called Kiss Me Over the Garden Gate that just adds a particular flavor to the gardens. It gets very tall and it has these beautiful pink pendants that hang down. And we actually use the wood from it later on. It dries just like bamboo. But I have to say that there is not one particular flower or types. I just added things as I saw them and liked them. And along the way, many things didn't work out in this garden because it's very crowded. It doesn't get full sunlight. The gardens,
trial and error.
Yeah,
as most
the other
gardeners
gardens, you get more sunlight in them, and you have a wider variety that you can put in them. So in this one, I wanted to go with clematis because I thought that was definitely cottage garden.
Right.
We do have roses, daylilies. Really, there's just a lot of variety in it, and that's what a cottage garden is.
And you still use containers to beautiful effect throughout the garden. So even though you've got more space now that oak tree's come down, you still use quite a bit of containers.
You have to, because your perennials just only bloom such a short period of time, and if you want color all summer long, the containers will bring you through that part.
And you definitely have color just everywhere. It's just beautiful. So you have these lovely places with tables, benches, areas around your garden. Do you often invite friends to come out and enjoy lemonade as you've done for us here today?
We do, and my granddaughter and I actually sit out here a lot and read. It's just the ideal place because it's cozy.
It is.
It's quiet. You get some shade. And when we had our bearded collie before, there was a wooden bench that sat here, and I got rid of the bench after we lost him because that was his spot. He was always laying on it, and I'd come out here and sit with him, read my book, and it was just a favorite spot for the two of us to be.
That's nice. And you have really designed this garden to accommodate not only pets, but you also really are accommodating wildlife here as well. Water for the birds. Tell us about your interest in wildlife and the things that you've done.
Well, my dad was a great inspiration for wildlife. He just loved the outdoors, and he got me started in wildlife. And then I also had a great aunt who was very interested and had bird feeders, bird houses. As I started learning more about them through books and stuff, I thought I should be able to bring in more birds if I have certain flowers. We get everything from skunks to opossums. We have
residents you may not want?
Yes, mallards that have been here. We are on a flyway between Albert Lea Lake and Fountain Lake, so we will see the eagles go over, the condors and the mallards. We just get so much, and I love that we have so many different types of butterflies that come. The phlox are a real attractor to any type of butterfly. So it's just kind of neat to have them. I'm an advocate for wildlife. I really love wildlife. And I wanted this garden to be for them, not a display garden for people to come and browse and say, oh, isn't that pretty? I wanted it so that they had a place to come where they could have a habitat, where they could get food.
And shelter?
And shelter. Great. And that's really what the gardens are.
And you've accomplished that. We've seen several things while we've been here setting up.
Yes, I'm hoping that the yellow swallowtail will come back on the phlox while we're here. They're beautiful.
So beautiful. So you are also a writer, and you write about gardening.
I am.
Have you always been a writer, and have you always written about gardens, or how did that come about?
I've journaled since I was 8 years old.
Okay, so you've been writing a long time.
I have, and I got my granddaughter started on it. When I started journaling, it was basically things that happened in my life, a diary as a teenager. And then as I got older, I wanted to keep it for historical purposes so that if I ever had a grandchild or grandchildren, they would be able to look back and understand what happened when President Kennedy was assassinated, or Martin Luther King, or any of those. So I've journaled all my life, but for garden writing, I have a cousin who knows how much I love to garden, and she sent me a book that was really inspirational. It was a lady who was a psychologist, and she would bring her patients to her garden as therapy.
Oh, sure.
And then she changed from being just a psychologist. She actually went to start in writing books on gardening, and I started reading what she wrote in there, and I thought, you know, all your life you've written. Why can't you write about gardens, something you love?
Right.
So I approached 2 different newspapers and said, you don't have a garden column. Would you be interested in having one? they said, well, let's try it and we'll see. So I do write for a weekly newspaper in Iowa, and then I write for the local paper once a month.
Tell us why you love having a garden and why you enjoy spending time out here.
To me, it was a respite from a very hectic lifestyle. I had 2 very high intensity jobs, and when you get home at night, you're just exhausted, and you can come out here, and at night it is just so peaceful. When about 8 o'clock, Albert Lea shuts down, and you don't hear any cars. I can hear the fountains, you know, the water from them as they tumble down them. The birds that are out here, the wrens serenade me all the time. It's just very peaceful, and I love to read out here. To me, this is the best place in the world to sit, because I read a lot about gardening, and I can relate to what they're telling me in whatever I'm reading. So I'll look at it and I'll go, oh, I can do that in my garden probably, or
Sure.
oh, now I know why that didn't work. So it's just it's a wonderful place for me. All of my friends say it's just like the best place. It's like heaven.
It is. You have created a beautiful respite from kind of the outside world, and it's been a pleasure being here and enjoying this with you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for coming and seeing all of this.
Well, I hope you'll stay with us for more Garden Connections. We're going to get another great recipe from Chef Stephen Larson coming up next on Garden Connections.
Hi, I'm Chef Stephen Larson. Welcome to my kitchen at Quarter Quarter Restaurant in Harmony, Minnesota. Beets provide a wonderful opportunity to use both ends of the plant for different purposes. Southern cooking has a long tradition of using the leafy greens of root vegetables in other dishes. So that's what we're going to do in this recipe. We're going to do braised beet greens with black-eyed peas and a little bit of bacon, because who doesn't like bacon and things? So to start off, we need 4 cups of shredded or chopped beet greens. So we've just got these cleaned and stemmed here. And we can roll those up. And just give them a quick chop that way. You can give them another shot or so if you really want to, but it doesn't really matter, as long as they get chopped up a bit. Then in the pan over here, I've already started a couple of ounces of smoked bacon and cooked that down till it was just lightly colored, along with a ½ a cup of onion. So we've got that cooked, so that's ready to go. So what we can do then is add our beet greens to that and let them cook just a bit till they wilt. Then we will add some of our other ingredients. So I'm going to go ahead and add my greens here. This is about 4 cups packed, because greens really shrink down when you cook them. So we want to start off with plenty. As these are cooking down, we'll talk about our other ingredients that we need to add. We have a teaspoon of fresh grated ginger, about ½ teaspoon of salt, ¼ teaspoon of pepper, and a tablespoon of brown sugar. That's really going to help bring out the sweetness in the onion and the greens themselves. Then we're going to braise it, meaning cooking in a little bit of liquid, with ½ a cup of chicken stock. Now you can just use water here if you want to. Just need a little bit of liquid in there to help it cook down. At the very end, we're going to add 2 cans of black-eyed peas that have been rinsed and drained. Okay, it's time to add our seasonings. So salt, pepper, fresh ginger, and brown sugar. And we'll stir that through. Make sure that everything gets evenly coated. You can see how quickly and how far down those are cooking already. Then we're going to add a bit of our stock to that. It's a half a cup. Then we can add our beans. So we'll let this simmer together until almost all of the liquid is gone, thereby getting all of that flavor into those black-eyed peas and really bringing out the great flavor of the beet greens. Now that our peas and greens are almost ready, I'm going to show you a nice little side dish to go along with it. Here we have some grilled chicken breasts with a mango sauce. Now, the beans and greens themselves make for a very nice light lunch if you have a nice big portion of them, but they also make a great side dish for a protein like grilled chicken. All right, so these are ready to go, and we'll just take those and put them on the side. And there we have a beautiful light luncheon. So beautiful colors, great flavor, very healthy, because there's nothing better than eating fresh from your garden.
Last week, Master Gardener Paul Trcka helped diagnose some issues we were having in our garden. He returns again this week to continue sharing his advice.
Okay.
So over here, we're gonna uncover them. Ta-da! And let's see what we've got.
Oh, wow.
Oh, hey! Discovery.
And you got some beets in there?
This is actually a lettuce that we
Oh,
planted,
lettuce.
and
Wow.
this is looking good. I know Jen had told me a couple weeks ago she came out and checked on it, and it was not so great, but this looks very nice. This is a Galactic Merlot red lettuce. So I love the
Wow.
way that's looking. That's looking terrific. But our tomato plants, well, you can see they have tons of blossoms
Yeah,
and even some fruit. Look at right here.
sure.
Hooray! Look at this. Aren't those adorable? They're still quite small.
Right. Now, is this variety, is this supposed to have a smaller?
It is not supposed to be a miniature plant, no.
Now, is that one of them over there? Is that what it's supposed to be?
That is a different. We actually planted a couple different varieties. We wanted a beefsteak, kind of a larger tomato, and we wanted a cherry tomato. And as you can see, again, not a very big plant. I mean, really, look at how tiny this plant is, but it's got some nice tomatoes on it.
Yeah.
So is that going to be a problem for this plant in the months to come? Is this all we're going to get from a fruiting standpoint? Should we
Well-
be worried, I guess is my question.
Well, as long as they're flowering, you know, they're going to continue to develop, you know, new fruit. So, you know, as going back to your question, should you be worried? I mean, you look at the cluster down here,
Yeah, that looks great.
and then you got new flowers coming. I look at this and I'm saying, you know, I'm not, and as far as on the lower leaves, I'm not seeing any deficiencies or anything. I mean,
Okay.
there's
Yep,
no
no
diseases
yellowing of
forming or
leaves, yep.
anything. So I think as far as the tomatoes go, I think we're moving along quite well and
All right.
quite
So
nicely.
this is looking better.
This is looking better.
Okay.
I mean, again, looking at the lower leaves, I mean, the lower leaves tend to get a lot more shade. They tend to get a lot more moisture, and they develop a lot of diseases there. And so, but they're not showing any deficiencies or anything. So I think, you know, they're doing very well here.
Okay, and it looks like they're large enough we should leave this cover off as well. I think that served its purpose in the early spring for a little frost protection, but easily should come off now, and we should maybe provide some
Now-
supports for these tomatoes as well.
You will also have to locate some of your people here. There's a few weeds out here that need to be
Yep.
removed, and that's part of the gardening process.
And, yep, we'll do that as well. All right, let's go uncover what we've got over there and see what we find underneath. This was going to be
Okay, we're going to remove these covers here.
Yes, let's do that. So we had cauliflower and broccoli. Let's see what we've got. Ta-da! Oh, hey. Interesting. So the cauliflower is clearly down on your end.
Yeah.
And look at, we've got broccoli going already.
Those are beautiful.
Looks great. And again, the row cover definitely should come off. These plants are getting, you can see they're a little squashed by it. We probably should have removed this a couple of weeks ago.
Now, one thing to keep in mind, Stephanie, is because we're having warmer temperature than normal and things are moved ahead, plants are going to, like your broccoli and some of your lettuces, rhubarb, they're going to go to flower earlier.
And is that what this one's doing down here?
Yes.
And is he pretty much
as
all done? I see there's a little broccoli floret down there.
Once they go to flower, most of the energy is being funneled into the seed and not into the plant tissue like here. You know, so and that's a lot of that has to do with the higher temperatures that we've had. And the time frame, our heat units, the stage of development is further ahead than our typical calendar date.
Okay. Now these have some side shoots going. Can we trim this? Can we just cut this
Yes.
off and expect these others to develop more normally?
Yes, you can trim that off. Yes, that'll work too.
Okay, great. We will do that with this plant then and look forward to seeing the broccoli off of these. These are, other than being a little squashed, looking pretty good.
And I think the netting does a nice job of keeping the insects off of it.
Yes, that's another benefit to it, but perhaps we need to get some bigger hoops if we're going to keep that on.
Yeah,
Doesn't
because
look like they've been impacted by, I know at home I have a lot of trouble with cabbage butterflies getting into these plants, and then you end up with the little green worms on the underside of the leaves and holes, and these look really pretty good.
Correct.
Great. So you are right in front of our kale, which is looking fabulous.
Right.
Looking good, so we don't need to worry
really
about
good.
that.
Yeah.
Let's go over to that back row and talk about our celery, because I can see some look great and some are very pale yellow. Some of it looks great, nice bright green, but this guy here on the end, not so good.
Yeah. You can see that, like you got it, well, you can see with the celery, you get this, the very variegated leaves where they got deep serrations. But you also have a few of these guys in here that you just want to get rid of these guys here, the lambs or the ragweed.
Ragweed, yep.
Now, when you look at them, this guy here, see all the whiteness and the yellowing of the leaves? But these here also show some whiteness as well on the lower leaves. Now again, Stephanie, with your permission, I would like to...
Dig that guy up?
Yes, dig
Let's
that guy up.
Let's see what's going on underneath.
Take a look at what its roots look like. Now the soil is very mellow. As I move my shovel down, it's very mellow, it's soft.
Yep. And this area we composted with the great chopped leaves that had been through the winter, and it was really beautiful.
Okay, were these freshly chopped leaves?
No, they'd been overwintered.
Okay. Okay, the soil is moist. I mean, as you take your finger and this is all part of gardening, getting your fingers dirty,
But that's what you mean by a ribbon. When you push the soil out like that, it should stick together.
To determine that is there plenty of moisture there.
And there clearly is in this section.
Now, when you look at the roots again, I mean, the roots all have kind of a white, healthy appearance to them. Now, when you mentioned about that you put chopped leaves here, they weren't composted, right?
They were originally chopped and just piled outside and left over winter.
Okay, one of the things about chopped leaves is you should really compost leaves before you put them to a garden. This almost looks like a nitrogen deficiency on these plants.
Oh.
So when you put out fresh leaves, in order for them to break down, when it goes through its cycle of breaking down or decomposing, the bacteria in the soil need to use some of the nitrogen in there.
Right.
And they will use the nitrogen. So anytime you use freshly chopped leaves, you want to make sure they're composted before, so you got to be careful with those things. Now, like a plant like a green bean, when we looked at that, green beans are legumes. They will produce their own nitrogen.
Right.
Whereas the celery is more of a broadleaf. It's not a legume plant, so it's dependent on the organic matter. And I would venture to guess by the lower leaves being as yellow as they are, we probably have a little bit of a nitrogen problem. And also, as leaves decompose, do you know, were they from oak trees, or do you?
I don't know. Does it matter?
Sometimes you can. If they're from oak trees, they tend to have more tannin acids and stuff in their root or in the leaves, so you can have more acids and those kind of things. So hence, composting it, which will break down.
Would soften that effect.
Soften that effect, right.
All right, great. Well, Paul, you have given us a ton of great ideas on how to perk up our garden a little bit. Thank you so much for the advice that you've given us. It's great to have a master gardener on hand.
Well, thank you very much, Stephanie.
All right. Well, we obviously have some just muscle work to do in here, but I hope you've enjoyed today's episode and learned a little bit about what you can do if your garden gets a little bit out of control. For Garden Connections, I'm your host, Stephanie Passingham. On Garden Connections, we'd love to see photos of your garden. Or if you have questions for our garden experts, contact us by emailing garden@ksmq.org or like us on Facebook.